The year is 1996, and a little-known Capcom game called Resident Evil had just taken the world by storm. It quickly became a bestseller, and pretty much put the survival horror genre at the forefront of gaming. And with something so monumentous, it couldn't just be ignored, especially by other game publishers. One of those publishers was Konami, a Japanese-based company just like Capcom, who were known for Castlevania and the recently shown Metal Gear Solid. At the time, they were looking for a game that would be big in the States, just like Resident Evil. And the people that were assigned to accomplish this task were a recently created tiny development team within KSET, also known as Konami Computer Entertainment Tokyo, a subsidiary of Konami Group Corporation. And when I say it was a tiny development team, I truly mean that, as there were only 10 members near its inception. These members were all coming off other projects, and some of them were new to the industry altogether. This team would eventually be known as Team Silent. The name Team Silent was quite the interesting choice, wasn't it? Well, funnily enough, it wasn't just a random name for the group, as the game they were developing would soon be called Silent Hill. And this was Konami's and the group's answer to Capcom's Resident Evil. But who were the faces behind the game's creation? Well, let's start with its director, Kiichiro Toyama. Before I do though, this information may not all be correct, as finding this stuff is no easy feat. Especially so when looking up this stuff about this game, it leads to different answers from different places, most of which are all in Japanese. So please bear with me. And if you find anything incorrect, then please leave a comment below to let me know. Before working on Silent Hill, Kiichiro Toyama worked as a graphic artist on a ported version of the cult classic game Snatcher, created by the famous game designer and Norman Reedus lover Hideo Kojima. The game was really good, but his work was on an already released game. Afterwards, he began work on a game called International Track and Field for the PlayStation 1. This wasn't small-time work like he did in Snatcher, as he played a bigger role in the development of this game. And after its successful release, he got the chance to step into the director's chair for KSET's yet-to-be-named horror project. Instead of going the same route as Resident Evil, Toyama went with an occult angle to his game's story, even drawing inspiration from the works of Stephen King, which I'll give you a couple of guesses on which one of his works it was. Next would be the game's programmers. Silent Hill's game engine would need to be created from the ground up, and this would be done by International Track and Field dev, lead programmer Akihiro Imamura. And to further differentiate themselves from RE, they went with a full 3D space, instead of 2D pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D sprites moving through them. This could not have been an easy task for one man to accomplish, and that's where yet another International Track and Field dev named Naoto Oshima would come in to help. He would be the one working on the game's camera and environmental effects. I'm sure he did more than his fair share on helping with the game's engine, but like I said, this stuff isn't really easy to find. Another programmer that would arrive a little later to help with the game's in-depth systems was Hiroyuki Iwaku. He was the game's event programmer, which is a very important role, as it deals with the game's scripting. He also worked on the game's puzzles, which rely heavily on said scripting, so it made the most sense to have him do both, as he was the right man for the job. With the game's engine and in-depth systems now covered, who would be the artist for the game's many environments, characters, and enemies? Well, that role wouldn't rely solely on one person, just like the game's systems, and was instead spread out through a handful of people. Those people were Masashi Tsuboyama, Takayuki Ando, Naoko Sato, Takayoshi Sato, and Masahiro Ito. The latter of which ended up having a very prolific career after Silent Hill's release, as he continued to design monsters for the series leading up to the very recent Silent Hill 2 remake. But that's getting off topic. Before working on Silent Hill, Takayoshi Sato had no prior experience with working on 3D art, as the last game he worked on only required work to be done in 2D. But he saw that 2D was going to become obsolete, and in a "I'm gonna lose my job" type of panic, started to learn 3D all on his own throughout the course of 5 months. Not too bad, right? Well, it was, as he had to stay up until midnight every single day for those 5 months, and that's on top of his 15-hour workdays. The man was dedicated for sure. So, what was his reward for learning this new skill in the company? Was it a major role in the production of a game? Not exactly. He was given the groundbreaking assignment of making letters for subtitles.
Wow!
It got even worse though, as he ended up having to teach the older people in the company what he learned, for basically no credit at all due to how Japanese society works. In an act of rebellion, he created a 4-second 3D movie and showed it to Konami higher-ups, with the firm stance of not training anyone unless he got real work. That's how he ended up working on Silent Hill. There is more to his story, but I'll be bringing that up in the story section. One of the few females of the group, Naoko Sato, was one of the monster designers, and ended up creating one of the most recognizable enemies in the series. That one being the puppet nurse. She, alongside background and motion designer Masashi Tsuboyama and background designer Takayuki Ando, would group together to design the demos for Silent Hill. All these artists weren't just making concept art for other people to implement into the game. They were the ones doing the implementations. It really is hard to imagine all of the countless hours that the group must have spent creating this game, as most of them took on more than one role to get it completed. Throughout the game's 3-year development, many more people would join to help finish the project, and during that time, the development would stop and continue multiple times, even changing producers, going from Haruki Yukata, who gave Kiichiro Toyama the role of director, to Gozo Kotao, who by this time had been employed at Konami for nearly 10 years. This decision was quite the odd one, seeing as Gozo Kotao only had a background in sales, with pretty much zero experience when it came to making video games. This doesn't always mean a bad thing though, and it seemingly worked out for Gozo, as he stuck around in the gaming scene for a long time afterwards. There is one more major name in this game's development that I'm going to save a whole section for at the end of the video. And yes, you know who I'm talking about. After those grueling 3 years of development, Silent Hill was released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1, and was met with high praise across the board. While it may have been compared to Resident Evil, most saw that it could stand on its own, with its different takes on horror and its overall atmosphere. The sales numbers for the game are nothing to scoff at as well, with the final number being over 2 million in sales, which earned Silent Hill the coveted, the highly sought after, the extremely ugly green greatest hits bar on the side of its case.
Do you like what you see?
Holy Jesus!
In comparison to the game that will forever be compared to it, with no thanks to me, Resident Evil's first game sold close to 3 million units, if you don't take the director's cut and DualShock versions into account. With the development of this game skimmed over like the true professional that I am, let's start shifting over to the story of the game. If you watched my Resident Evil videos, then you know what to be prepared for. If you haven't, then let me first welcome you to this soon-to-be shit show, because you're about to see some comedy. I'll be throwing my comedy into the mix while going over the story of Silent Hill. This may not be for everyone, and I understand if it isn't, but I will say that I deeply love this series, just like I do with Resident Evil. I just can't help but add my take on things in a semi-serious way. I like informing you, but also poking fun at the games that I cover. So if that's not for you, then I understand. There are plenty of amazing and more serious channels dedicated to Silent Hill on this platform, and I wouldn't blame you for going to those instead. But if you decide to stick around and give me a chance, then for one, I deeply appreciate you, and 2, I hope you enjoy it, because that's all I truly care about. If this does well and you guys actually enjoy it, then I'll definitely go over the most talked about entry in the series, Silent Hill 2. And to be quite honest, I don't think finding information on that game will be anywhere near as difficult as it was for this one, as I did absolutely no research beforehand. I just thought, hey, I love the Silent Hill series, so I'll cover that in between the Resident Evil games. Oh, how naive I was, thinking it would be a cakewalk to cover this game's development. Alright, that's enough complaining. With you, and me, now prepared, let's delve into the foggy town of Silent Hill. The story begins with our protagonist, Harry Mason, and his daughter, Cheryl, last name obviously Mason, casually driving through the night in his sweet Jeep Wrangler.
Let's talk fun. Let's talk classic Jeep Wrangler. Let's talk lots of fun.
Harry is a cool dad, but also a cool dad that follows the law, more specifically, the traffic laws. But apparently he isn't going fast enough for this so-called police officer, who soon overtakes him on her motorcycle. A bit later in the drive, Harry spots that same motorcycle crash on the side of the road, with no signs of the officer. But hey, at least he wasn't the one that crashed, right? Harry soon awakens from said crash only to find his daughter missing. So the likely scenario was she got rocketed out of her seat and onto the street. Pretty good rhyme, right? Well, it was all for naught, because she isn't anywhere near the crash. So Harry must look for her in the fog-covered town of Silent Hill. While making his way through the town, he notices that it's too quiet, and there are no signs of life anywhere.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
He then hears footsteps nearby, and when he turns a corner, he sees that they belong to his daughter, Cheryl. But this would be an incredibly short game if this was the end of his search. So as soon as he has sight of her, the dumbass kid runs off, even with her father calling out to her.
Get your ass back here!
He gives chase, which leads to a small alley, with there being some sort of bloody mess on the ground. Off in the distance, a siren can be heard, with no real notion of why it's going off. As Harry delves further in, it suddenly becomes dark out, and he must light a match to be able to see where he is going. This is where the game shifts into a much darker tone. While walking through the alley, the camera starts to use these really strange angles, which helps the game build upon the already uncomfortable setting that it's putting you through. Soon after, he comes across medical equipment, which isn't too strange, but what is a single stretcher that has a body lying on it, but it's thankfully obscured by a white sheet. The siren from earlier is still going off, and the once normal alley is changing into something more sinister. There are rusted gates blocking pathways, and along the ground are pools of blood. Following these, which is something I wouldn't recommend, eventually leads Harry to a dead end. At this dead end is a corpse, strung up on a fence by barbed wire. Before he has time to fully process what's going on, he is attacked by small creatures wielding knives. The way he came in from is now blocked off, and after being stabbed a couple of times, Harry passes out, only to awaken inside a cafe. But he's not alone, as the police officer he saw earlier is here as well. She asks him how he feels, and he decides to leave out the whole nightmare baby creature stabbings, only making light of it by saying he's no worse for wear, but feels like he got run over by a truck, which she remarks that she's glad to hear. The no worse for wear part, not the being run over by a truck one. Her name is Sybil Bennett, and she is a police officer from the nearby town of Brams. She and Harry both don't have a clue on what's going on with the town, with her mentioning that the phones and her radio aren't working, so she is deciding to head back to Brams to get reinforcements. Harry gets up to leave the cafe, but she stops him due to the dangers lurking outside. But Cheryl is still out there somewhere, so he intends to look for her. She asks if he has a gun, which he doesn't, So she makes the career-ending decision of handing him hers, which I can say is extremely American. She tells him that she will be back as soon as possible and heads out of the cafe, leaving him all alone. Before we move onward, I'd like to talk a bit about the cutscenes, because as you can see, they don't look like anything a small team could have put out. At the time this game was released, these were actually quite impressive, and they still are even today. When compared to the other survival horror giant, Resident Evil, Silent Hill's cutscenes actually look better. I think it's because Silent Hill went with very muted colors, like grays and browns, while Resident Evil opted for a more colorful approach with their cutscenes. The only drawback with Silent Hills is that the cutscenes don't involve dialogue of any kind, so it was probably a lot easier to animate. While Resident Evil, on the other hand, did have dialogue, with their cutscenes also being longer in duration. This is in no way me attacking Silent Hill's cutscenes, especially given the fact that all of them were mainly done by one person. That person being Takayoshi Sato, who spent an insane amount of time making them. And that's not even going over the fact that he had to use all the computers in the office to render said cutscenes. And while they were rendering, he slept under his desk. He did this throughout the 3 years this game took to be completed. I truly cannot comprehend someone doing this for any reason beyond pure passion for the project. And while we can branch off into the Japanese work culture, that's not something we should even venture into if we want to keep our sanity, as it sounds more nightmarish than anything this game or Resident Evil could throw at you. So that aside, we have to give it to Takayoshi Sato, as without him and his hard work, the cutscenes and this game would be so much lesser without his contributions. I also want to quickly go over the alleyway scene right before Harry wakes up in the cafe. I'm not 100% sure if this was a nightmare or not, especially when you take things that happen later on in the game into account. But one thing is certain. This introduction is a great way to kick off all the horrors you'll soon be subjected to. From the slow build with the bloody mess and the siren as soon as Harry enters the alley, all the way to the off-putting cameras that are used when things start shifting to a more nightmarish tone. It's such a shock to go from a quiet, fog-filled start when Harry wakes up from the accident, to end up in a pitch-dark alley riddled with horrific scenery, such as the out-of-place rust-covered fences and the mutilated body right at the section's end. It's pretty much the perfect intro in my opinion, and I can't really think of a horror game that has a better and more impactful start like this one does. Even the later games in the series can't match this start, but that's obviously my opinion. So with all that said, let's get back on track with the story. With Sybil now gone, Harry heads over to the cafe's counter to grab the map and the flashlight. The game then throws a scare your way with a quick blink and you'll miss it moment right behind Harry. Don't worry, something will come of this. On a nearby table is a broken radio that suddenly starts to make a ringing sound when Harry is about to leave the cafe. When he approaches it, this happens. This pterodactyl-looking-ass bird thing is our first enemy, and you are stuck in here until it's defeated. Trust me, I tried to hightail it out, but Harry has a death wish. Thanks to Sybil's handgun, it goes down after a couple shots, and this is when Harry finally realizes that this is no dream, and the things that are happening in this town are as real as it gets. Outside the cafe, Harry decides it would be best to head back to the alley where he, died in? To be honest, I don't really know. So regardless, he thinks it's best to look for Cheryl where he got stabbed in the groin a couple of times by walking baby creatures. The outdoor segments of Silent Hill, also taking place in Silent Hill,
No shit.
is where the game differentiates itself from Resident Evil, as it allows you to walk around in a semi-open world environment and look for items that'll help you deal with the threats this game has. Granted, most of the items you come across are just ammo and healing items, but the game allowing this traversal really helps flesh out the town of Silent Hill. There are also a small handful of buildings you can enter in your constant search for more shit to carry, which thankfully doesn't require an item box of any kind, as Harry has deep pockets in those sweet-ass jeans and brown leather jacket. The stroll through the town isn't as calming as it sounds though, as there are enemies roaming around that will attack Harry on sight. The ones you'll see are the previous dealt with pterodactyls, and the horror game staple at this point, dogs, which are as annoying as you'd expect. And while you can spend time and ammo on dealing with these creatures, it's best just to run past them, as the non-open world segments will require the ammo and healing items more. Another thing that I'm sure you've noticed by now is that the town is riddled with this thick fog that obscures anything that's more than 5 feet in front of Harry. This is because of the hardware limitations that the PlayStation 1 had, and if the devs didn't do this, then the game would have probably set the poor old PlayStation 1 on fire the moment Harry stepped outside of his Jeep. A lot of games had this type of fog to conceal loading textures, but Silent Hills has a good reason for being there, which helps the atmosphere tremendously. And yes, before I continue on, it's fog and snow, not smoke and ash, so if anyone says otherwise, they are wrong. Harry finally reaches the alley where he got circumcised, which I worded that way as a nice throwback to a good old Silent Hill wiki theory. If you know, then you know. If not, then look it up at your own discretion, because it's really stupid.
And nip the tip. Who's first?
Anyway, inside the alley, he comes across Cheryl's sketchbook and a piece of paper sitting by it. The paper has the words, "to school" on it, which to us geniuses out there, and Harry, clearly means Cheryl is at the school. So that is our next destination. But before we head there, take a look at this beautiful drawing of Harry on Cheryl's sketchbook. The resemblance is uncanny.
Holy Jesus.
By the sketchbook is a steel pipe, which is a very handy melee option early on in Silent Hill. While you may have gotten the knife at the cafe, the pipe has a lot more reach and can stun enemies with its charged attack. Now this is where things can get a bit convoluted. In order to reach the school, Harry needs to find a key to a house on 11th Street, because all the roads leading to the school are just missing. Which you'd think was odd if there weren't fucking dinosaurs flying around the place. In order to find the key, Harry must find a scrap of paper that's sitting on a ledge by one of these missing roads on Matheson Street. On the paper is Doghouse, 11th Street, which means the key to the house is in a doghouse on 11th Street.
No shit.
When you grab the key from said doghouse, which Harry points out has no dog nearby, which is a fucking lie,
Hi, doggy.
you can finally enter said house. But that's not the end of your problems, as there are more keys needing to be found. This is because the door leading to the backyard of the house has a staggering 3 locks on it that require 3 separate keys. Thankfully, there is a helpful map sitting by the door that marks the 3 locations for you. The first key, which is the key of the lion, is in the back of a cop car at the far end of Finney Street. The second, the key of the woodman, is in an alley between Bachman Road and Matheson Street. In that alley, there is a gate that can be entered, which leads to a small basketball court where someone was playing the sport with a poor dog's head. By the head is the key. The last, the key of the scarecrow, is at the bottom or near bottom of Elroy Street. Harry just needs to walk across this very unreliable looking board to reach the house that is pretty much falling into nothingness. In the mailbox by the door lies the key, and with all 3, he can head back to the house and unlock this stupid ass 3-locked door. When Harry steps out the back door, things start to change. And if you thought the fog was bad, well, this may be a lot worse for you, especially if you fear the dark, because it suddenly becomes pitch black outside. This is where the flashlight he got from the cafe really shines, as he can now use it to see a whopping 10 to 15 feet in front of him, which is further than the fog, but not by a whole lot. It's made worse by the fact that you can obviously only see what's in the flashlight's beam, so get ready to hear a whole lot of creatures moving around you without actually seeing them. The other item that is crucial to Harry's survival is the broken radio that he grabbed from inside the cafe. If you remember, it started to pick up a staticky signal when the pterodactyl monster, also known as the air screamer, got near the cafe's window. This is because it's able to warn Harry of nearby monsters. The louder the signal, the closer the monster is. Nothing really explains why the radio does this, but its ability to warn the player of a monster's presence makes it a very important item. While these may not make you feel super safe, the upside to all of this is that the trip to the school is pretty straightforward. I mean, as straightforward as it can be in pure darkness. Surrounded by a ton of dogs is Midwich Elementary School. Before getting to the meat of this place, there are a couple of sights to see first, like the beautiful decorations littered throughout the school, like this creepy ass painting, or this poster with a creepy face that says, "A friend in need."
No thanks, bro.
Another highlight is the locker room, where you can save this poor kitty cat that was locked inside a locker. Run! Be free! Let's just pretend that didn't happen. What happens if you need to use the restroom during your travels through here? Well, Midwich has got you covered, as there are bathrooms on both floors. Alright, let's just move on. Right near the entrance is the reception desk, which has 3 notes written in blood. These are little guides that can be followed in order to make your way through the school. The first one says, 10 o'clock, Alchemy Laboratory. Gold in an old man's palm, the future hidden in his fist. Exchange for Sage's water. Well, the puzzles in this game aren't going to be as easy as Resident Evil's, are they? The second note says, 12 o'clock, a place with songs and sound. A silver guidepost is untapped in Lost Tongues. Awakening at an ordained order. And the third and final one says, 5 o'clock, darkness that brings the choking heat. Flames render the silence, awakening the hungry beast. Open time's door to beckon prey. So, what does this all mean? Well, at this point in the game, I have absolutely no idea. So let's tackle these one at a time. The first one is the Alchemy Laboratory, and with my expert deducing skills, I figured it would be the chemistry lab on the second floor. Inside is a statue of a hand sitting on a table that is clutching on to something, but Harry is unable to get it to release the item. To solve this, we need to look at the last line of the note, which is to exchange for Sage's water. Now, I could say I knew what this meant, but that would be false. But thankfully, the answer is literally right next to us. More specifically, in the next room, which contains all the chemistry lab's equipment. Standing by itself, on a shelf, is a purple bottle containing hydrochloric acid. Simply pouring it onto the hand gives us access to the gold medallion it was holding onto. So that is the first one completed. The second note is also pretty straightforward, if you glance at the school's map for more than a quick second. The note says a place of song and sound, and lucky for us, the school has a music room right on the second floor. And right in the center of the room is a grand piano. You know how I said the first puzzle was completed? Well, I lied. I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, since the item in the first note was obtained, and because I said so, but it's not really completed yet, because if you decide to head to the second puzzle location, you are unable to access it. The game does give you this information, but in the most unhelpful way possible. You remember that time that was stamped on each of the notes? That is what the clock tower's time must be set to in order to have access to the puzzle. Where is the clock tower? It's sitting in the lower right corner of the school's courtyard. The way to change its time is by inserting the gold medallion into one of the slots at the base of the clock tower. Once you've done this, the time changes, and the second puzzle can now be used, which leads to the very infamous piano puzzle. This puzzle can be quite difficult, as I'm sure many of you know. On a chalkboard nearby is a message written in blood, which seems to be a trend that's been going on in this school apparently. The message is called A Tale of Birds Without a Voice, and it says, First flew the greedy pelican, eager for the reward, white wings flailing. Then came a silent dove, flying beyond the pelican, as far as he could. A raven flies in, flying higher than the dove, just to show that he can. A swan glides in, to find a peaceful spot next to another bird. Finally, out comes a crow, coming quickly to a stop, yawning and then napping. Who will show the way? Who will be the key? Who will lead to the silver reward? What the fuck? This puzzle can be pretty brutal if you don't know what you're listening for. If you mess around with the keys for a little, you'll hear a few of them are muted. These are the ones you need to press in the correct order. And the thing that gives this away is the title of the message, A Tale of Birds Without a Voice. Now all we need to do is press the keys in the correct order, which is still no easy task. The first key that needs to be pressed is the first muted white key. We know this because of the first lines in the message, mentioning a greedy pelican flew first, with its white wings flailing. The second is the furthest muted white key, as the second part of the message says a silent dove flew beyond the pelican and as far as it could. The third is the furthest black key, because the message says a raven flew in higher than the dove. The fourth one requires a bit of trial and error, because of how vague that part of the message is. It says that a swan glided in to find a spot next to another bird, which could be either the left or the right of the two white keys that have already been played. In the end, we find that it was to the left of the second played white key. The fifth and final key is the first black one, as the message states that a crow flew in and quickly came to a stop. So at least the final one didn't require some guesswork. Once these have been played in the correct order, the silver medallion hanging above the chalkboard falls to the floor. While heading back to the clock tower, let's talk about the game's controls and camera. Silent Hill, like Resident Evil, uses tank controls, which were extremely common around the release of these two games, but have long since been replaced with more fluid and responsive controls. Tank controls, as its name implies, has your character moving around like an old tank. Pressing up moves your character in the direction they are facing, and pressing down makes them obviously go backwards. The left and right directional controls rotates the character, instead of having them strafe like games do nowadays. For Resident Evil, these controls could shift when the camera angles changed, so if you didn't keep a hold of the directional buttons when they did, then the controls would suddenly shift. This would require different directional inputs, as the new angle you are in considers your character looking in a different direction. For new players, the controls and fixed cameras can be a difficult adjustment, especially if you are unaware of a camera angle change that was coming up, because of the aforementioned control change. But all of this doesn't really matter, because as you can see, Silent Hill's camera isn't fixed, but instead follows Harry around. This can be both a gift and a curse, as having the camera following Harry, instead of being placed at certain locations, allows you to see enemies that would be hidden off camera if they used fixed angles. The other plus side is not having the controls change on the fly, which can make the learning process of using tank controls just a bit easier. However, the camera in Silent Hill can become one of your worst enemies in the whole game. One moment it'll be following right behind Harry, and the next it'll be trying to shove itself in a wall, which can become a big problem when you're in tight quarters surrounded by enemies. Luckily, there is a way to move the camera yourself, but it's a bit unorthodox. Because the original PlayStation controller had no analog sticks, they went with a good old L2 button. And since it's not a stick, the camera adjustment that the L2 button does tries to force the camera right behind Harry. Most of the time this works fine, but there are some extreme cases where using this makes everything a whole lot worse. Another issue is the camera's starting point when you enter a room. Depending on the direction and size of the room, the camera can start in a multitude of different places. For example, while roaming the halls of the school, the camera could be right up behind Harry. But when you inevitably enter another room, it can all of a sudden be located at the opposite end of the room, staring right at Harry. This, like the controls, can be a bit jarring, but you will eventually get used to it, especially if you played Resident Evil first. I am by no means hating on either of these games, as both camera types don't really bother me that much. While it could be because I grew up with these games, I find that they each have a purpose. For Resident Evil, the fixed cameras help build tension, since you don't know what's sitting offside the camera. Since Silent Hill's render distance isn't far, most things are hidden to the player regardless of the direction they are looking, so it would be overkill if the game used a fixed camera. So allowing the player to have it constantly follow Harry makes for an easier time to locate certain items and enemies. Alright, that's enough talk about cameras, as I feel I'm going to explain it even worse if I keep droning on about it. After placing the silver medallion in its slot at the clock tower's base, the time changes once more, which leaves us with the final note from the reception desk. It makes mention of heat and flames, which if we look at the map, there is only one real place that it could lead to, and that would be the boiler room. Inside the room, there is a glowing red button placed on the boiler, and it's just begging to be pressed. I mean, what's the worst that could happen by pressing it?
Wow, that was realistic. Nathan, is that you? Back already?
To be pressed. I mean, what's the worst that could happen by pressing it?
Nathan, is that you? Son of a bitch, something is definitely wrong here.
Jokes aside, this button starts up the boiler, which unlocks the clock tower doors. And with that, the entire clock tower puzzle is complete. Not too bad after all. Okay, that was a lie. It was awful. Especially traversing through the damn place and getting crotch slashed by all these little bastards every couple of seconds. This school is filled to the brim with these assholes, with some hallways and rooms having up to 4 at once. To be quite honest, the halls aren't big enough to really run past them with ease every single time. So it becomes a game of should I shoot the shithead just for it to spawn a few seconds later, or get knifed in the groin a few hundred times. However, there is a way to avoid most of these issues with the enemies, as the flashlight can be turned off at any time. Why would you do such a thing? Well, it's because the light alerts and attracts enemies to you. While having the light off outside might not be the best time to do it, as it's dark as shit, turning it off indoors isn't such a bad idea, as you can see a lot better in these types of environments compared to the outdoors. Knowing when to turn off and on the flashlight becomes a balancing act. If you know where you're going and don't need light, then there's no harm in turning it off, as it only becomes a hindrance to you in these scenarios. You wouldn't really know to do this unless you took a look at the game's manual, as it's not stated anywhere else. Regardless of what methods you use to get to this point, the bright side is that we are finally done here. All that's left to do is go through the clock tower doors. Inside, a familiar siren can be heard off in the distance, and after going down a ladder,
What a thrill
and up a second one that has a keep out sign posted above it,
with darkness and silence through the night.
Harry finds himself in the school's courtyard. But it's not the normal Midwich Elementary School he was just at. It's in a place called the Otherworld, and things are a whole lot different, in both the courtyard and in the school itself. I guess I celebrated a little too early, didn't I?
That's not my problem. It's yours.
On the ground right outside the clock tower is a strange symbol, which Harry doesn't remember seeing. But who really gives a shit about that? Because we got more hallways full of these jackasses just waiting to stab him below the belt. Another annoyance that's roaming the rooms of the Otherworld Midwich are creepers. No, not those creepers. These little roadblocks. They will scurry around and beeline towards Harry every time he enters a room with them. And when they inevitably reach him, they will take a chunk out of his foot and run away. The damage they do is minimal, which doesn't make it so bad. Hell, the damage is so low that if I died to one of them, I'd just have to nuke my YouTube channel right at that moment. As I mentioned a bit ago, things are different in this version of the school. The walls look decayed, the floors have been replaced with grates, and some of the halls are blocked with chain fencing. In one of the classrooms, sitting on a table, is a card with a picture of a key. This can be used in the Otherworld office where the picture we saw in the real world's version has manifested itself. Before going through it, there is an extremely important item Harry must grab that will be pivotal in his advancement through Midwich. That item being a single rubber ball. I have absolutely no idea how to explain the logic of grabbing this item right at this moment, as it's non-existent. But this is a horror game, so who really needs the logic behind it? On the other end of that creepy door are the school's first floor bathrooms, and inside the one on the right is a single stall. When you open the door, you find the hanging corpse of Leonard Rhine. Next to it is a message written in blood, with his name and "The monster lurks" written below it. Just who is this guy exactly? Well, it's hard to say since he's never mentioned anywhere before or beyond this point. Sitting right below the corpse is the double-barrel shotgun, which has the otherworldly attribute of being able to fire 6 shells before needing to be reloaded. While that doesn't make a single lick of sense, its ability to hold all those shells and dish out immense damage at close quarters will come in handy real soon. In the furthest classroom in the hall the creepy door led to is a table with rotary phones on them, and on Harry's way out of the room, one starts to ring. When he picks it up, he hears this chilling voice.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny as fuck, man. I'm a freak, man. Like, for real.
But in actuality, it's Cheryl on the other end, asking for help and wondering where he's at. He can only get her name out before the phone abruptly hangs up. Also, don't mind the creeper losing its shit behind Harry's legs, as it's no threat here at all.
Fuck you.
The stairs nearby lead to both the second floor and the roof, with the latter having an easy puzzle involving the rubber ball that was obtained earlier. At the far end, there are 2 drainage pipes, with one of them having a key hanging inside. There is no possible way to grab it from here, so the way to obtain it is by flushing it down with water. A valve nearby can do this, but the water it releases goes down the first pipe before being able to reach the one with the key. This is where the rubber ball comes to our aid, because all we need to do is shove it in the first drain and turn on the water. The key then gets flushed down the pipe, leading all the way back down to the courtyard. With that key in hand, there is one more we need to grab, and this one is a lot easier to get. Remember the locker room where the cat was released in the normal world? This is in the same spot in this world. So we just need to open the locker and... Huh. It's not there. Where could it be? What a stand-up guy for holding onto that key for us. The key that he was holding unlocks the library, where there are 2 books of note. The first is called The Monster Lurks, which was written under Leonard Rhine's name in the bathroom. The book is open on the third chapter and makes mention of poltergeists, where their negative emotions can manifest into external energy and physical effects. The thing that can trigger these effects are nightmares, and seem to happen more frequently in adolescent girls. The second book is about a hunter and a giant reptile. The patient hunter has a bow and arrow at the ready, but instead of shooting at the lizard, the hunter taunts it. The lizard gets angry and vows to eat the hunter in a single bite. Its jaws open wide, and the hunter calmly draws his bow and shoots the arrow in the lizard's mouth, killing it. While we don't know it yet, this book is a giant-ass hint that will be pivotal in Harry's survival. Past the library, the final key can be used to reach the basement, where one final puzzle lies. The way is blocked, and there is a valve on Harry's left and right side. Turning one of these valves moves a turnstile that is in the center of the room and blocking the way forward. This can quickly get out of hand if you don't start off the right way, as turning a valve simply doesn't make the turnstile turn just once. Holy shit, that sentence was bad. Instead of making you sit here and watching me spin this thing over and over and over again, I'll just skip to the correct way of doing it. On the right valve, you turn it left 2 times, and on the left valve, you turn it right once. And that's it. With the way now clear, Harry walks past the turnstile and ends up on an elevator that leads downward. This is where he comes face to face with his first boss. Its name is Splithead. And, alright. I'm gonna level with you here. It's a penis on legs. The way its mouth opens also doesn't help its case here. But instead of making jokes about this, let's just talk about how we beat this thing.
Oh yeah.
If you fight this boss with no thought about it, then it can be quite hard, as it can withstand a ton of damage. But if you remember the book about the hunter and the lizard, then you already know how to beat this boss. If you need a refresher, then I'll just put it bluntly. All you gotta do is unload on the boss with your weapons, and once its mouth opens up, shoot hot lead right inside.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Did I handle this like an immature child? Yes. Yes, I did. But you gotta admit, it was pretty terrible. My childness aside, damaging Splithead via its mouth can be a double-edged sword, as it can instantly kill Harry if it manages to close its jaws on him. Though this can be easily circumvented by just backing away and firing your weapon at its mouth. Just don't get caught in a corner. After dealing enough damage, Splithead will die, and the siren from earlier will be heard once again. Suddenly, everything goes dark, only for Harry to awaken back in the normal world, where a dark-haired woman can be seen.
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
Harry finds himself in the boiler room once again, and sitting on the floor right where the woman was is a key with the tag K. Gordon. When Harry makes it back up to the school's first floor, he hears church bells in the distance, which means there is someone else in town. So that's his next destination. The key he got unlocks a door to a house leading to Bradbury Street, and then it's just a small trip to the church. Inside, standing near the church's altar, is an old woman with some neck issues. Now I know things have been crazy leading up to this point, but this is when it goes off the rails. The old woman tells Harry that she has been expecting him, saying it was foretold by gyromancy. What is gyromancy exactly? Well, it's a method of divination, where a person spins inside or around a circle that has the whole alphabet around it. This person must spin around until they either stumble or fall onto a letter, and they have to repeat this process for every letter until something can be spelled out from it. The thought of this old lady spinning around in a dark room and falling on the floor a handful of times is absolutely hilarious. And it's no wonder why she moved her neck awkwardly when we first saw her. She must have tweaked it by hitting the floor way too many times. Anyway, she knows that Harry is looking for his daughter, but instead of outright telling him where she is, she decides to be cryptic. She brings out an object called the Flauros, which in her words can break through the walls of darkness. Before she leaves, she points him in the direction of the hospital and places the weird object on the altar. Sitting by this object is a key to the drawbridge, which Harry must cross to get to his destination. Past this said drawbridge is Central Silent Hill, where there is a police station that has a couple things of note. The first is a chalkboard that makes mention of a product only available in certain areas of Silent Hill, and a material called White Claudia, which is a plant that's native to this region. It also questions whether its manufacturer is here in town as well, and if the dealer of this substance is also that manufacturer. So, what we can gather from this information is that whatever this White Claudia substance is, it's a drug of some sort. But there's no more information about it here. The second thing of note is the coroner's report about an Officer Gucci. Sweet name, right? It states that he most likely died of natural causes, with there being no signs of a murder. It also weirdly states that Gucci had no prior symptoms of heart disease, which is quite an odd thing to mention right after saying they died of natural causes. But alas, there is nothing else to go on with regards to this report and in the police station. So let's just move on. Past the metal gate lies the entrance to the hospital, and inside, Harry hears a gunshot ring out through the hall. Instead of booking it out of the hospital like a normal person, he heads in its direction, where he comes across a man holding a gun sitting near the body of a creature. This dude is apparently blind as shit, as he fires upon Harry, who is only 3 feet away from him the moment he walks in the room. I say he's blind because he can't see that Harry is human, but also because he somehow missed Harry entirely with the bullet he just shot at him. After doing a little dance, Harry hastily introduces himself to the armed man, whose name is Michael Kaufman. He says that he works at this hospital and that he, along with everyone else it seems, doesn't know what's going on with Silent Hill, as he was taking a nap right before everything changed. When he woke up, the hospital and the town were devoid of human life, only being replaced by the monsters that roam it now. Harry asks if Kaufman has seen any sailors around.
Do you know any sailors?
His daughter around. But the guy lacks good bedside manner, as he points out that she is likely dead with all the monsters around, only cutting the sentence short due to Harry probably giving him a sad, constipated look. Kaufman then shifts the topic over to Harry's wife and asks if she is with him, but Harry reveals that she died over 4 years ago. Speaking of death, Harry's answer ultimately leads to the death of their conversation, as Kaufman heads out a nearby door, leaving Harry all alone inside the quiet hospital. While exploring the first floor, Harry finds a key that unlocks the door to the basement, and a very useful plastic bottle. In the room next to where Harry grabbed this plastic bottle is the director's office, which looks to have been ransacked, as there are books lying all over the place with cabinet doors and drawers left open. Behind the desk is a broken glass vial that contained a strange red liquid. Even though Harry has no idea what it is, he can use the plastic bottle to retrieve some. What a strange, strange man. In the basement of the hospital lies the generator that powers up the elevator. Now that Harry has access to it, he can travel to floors 1 through 3. But regardless of what floor Harry goes to, all the doors leading further into their respective halls are locked. With nowhere else to go, he walks back into the elevator, only to notice that a button for the 4th floor has appeared. Which, if you didn't know, the number 4 is considered unlucky in Japan. The number 4 and the word death share the same pronunciation of shi, so certain elevators opt to skip out on the 4th floor of their buildings. The number being used here, in a hospital of all places, is definitely no coincidence. While Harry takes the elevator ride of death, we get a vision of the woman we saw in the school's boiler room, entering some sort of antique store. There isn't anything we can do with the info this vision gives us at the moment. Upon his arrival to the 4th floor, things have once again shifted into the nightmare world, and this time, there was no siren to mark its shift, Harry goes from the 4th floor down to the 3rd floor by using the staircase, and here is where Harry comes across the puppet nurse enemies. These poor souls are actually human, but have been taken over by some sort of parasite that has attached itself to their backs.
Do you like what you see?
Alongside the nurses are the doctors, who have suffered exactly the same fate. Is there a way to save these people? Probably, but Harry doesn't have time for that shit. His daughter's in danger. So, he instead fills them up with enough 9mm ammo to bring down a rhino. You know, while we're talking about enemies, I also thought this would be the best place to go over the game's combat. Why did I choose this time exactly? Well, it's because I pulled off this sweet move right here.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
Holy shit.
As I'm sure you've seen by now, this game has a combat system not unlike Resident Evil, but there are plenty of things that differentiate it from that game. The first is the game's melee combat, which, if you ask me, is miles ahead of RE's. Not only are there a handful of different melee weapons at your disposal, but the majority of them have 2 different attacks. Before you can do any of these attacks, however, you must draw your weapon. For both melee and ranged combat, you must prepare Harry before he can do any of his attacks by drawing his weapon out. Only then is he able to attack his enemies. The first type of melee attack has Harry swing his weapon twice in a quick motion, and the second is a strong downward swing that can easily stun lock most enemies it hits, but this attack takes more time to ready up than the fast one. The downside of using these weapons is the inability to move Harry, because once you ready the weapon, he plants his feet and can't move unless you take him out of his weapon draw stance. For melee attacks, I'd recommend placing Harry in a corner or in the back of a room before committing to the attack, as he can end up being surrounded otherwise. Now let's go over to the ranged combat. Besides the pistol Sybil hands him at the beginning, Harry can come across only 2 more firearms. Those being the shotgun he picked up at the school, and the rifle that will be appearing really soon. For both the shotgun and handgun, Harry is able to move while aiming and shooting, which is extremely handy in a room filled with enemies, and for the split head boss at Midwich. Another thing to mention is that Harry is able to strafe left and right with these weapons, which can be quite handy. But the move you'll forget most of the time is the sweet backward step I pulled on that nurse at the start of this section. It's there if you need it though, so I'm not gonna complain. The outlier to all this movement-based combat is the rifle. Since it's an extremely powerful weapon, Harry is unable to move when he takes aim with it, so it becomes a risk versus reward type of weapon. You give up your mobility in order to do a ton of damage. Something to mention here is that Harry is just your average Joe, not a highly trained Special Forces member. So, he isn't really too familiar with firearms. That means he is bound to miss his shots even when an enemy is right up his jean-clad ass. The upside is the game gives you plenty of ammo, so when you're sitting there and flipping the fuck out over him missing an enemy that's just a foot away, just remember, there is a lot more ammo in your inventory that he can miss his shots with in the future. Beyond the weapons, there are also healing items for Harry to use. This is the one thing that lacks when compared to Resident Evil. In that game, you come across your fair share of normal healing items like the healing spray, but the more in-depth aspect are the herbs you can combine for different effects. In Silent Hill, there are just 3 different types of healing items. There is the common health drink that restores only a small amount of health, the first aid kit marked by the now long gone red cross symbol that can't be used in games that heals a large portion of your health, and the ampule, which completely restores your health. An issue this game has, just like Resident Evil 1, is that the characters don't show how close to death they are. So after you get attacked, you'll find yourself hammering the menu screen to make sure that sweet green bar flies across Harry's chiseled face.
Nice.
One fight in particular relies solely on you spamming this menu over and over again, but that's for a later discussion. So that is pretty much it with the combat system in Silent Hill. There are more weapons to talk about, but that will have to wait until after the story section, as those are unlockables you get after completing the game. Oh crap, I don't know how, but I almost forgot to talk about a very important part of the game's combat. Once a certain amount of damage has been dealt to an enemy, they will fall to the ground, leaving them open to an attack. While you can simply shoot them or melee attack them again, there is another option that is a whole lot more viable, that being Harry's Curb Stomp attack. This will become your go-to once the enemy is vulnerable, as it can help save ammo and time. As in most cases, it outright kills the enemy.
Triple kill.
Coming back around to the Otherworld Hospital, Harry finds a blue plate with a turtle on it in the 3rd floor bathroom. Since it's the only thing of color in there, it's probably best for him to take it with him. Other items worth picking up on the 3rd floor is this lone blood pack, and another plate like the blue turtle one, but this one is yellow, and it's marked with a kitty cat. In room 302 is a television with a sweet setup. It's got a bed, a window with bars, and to top it all off, it's got a VHS player. If you don't know what that is, then please don't ask, as I do not want to feel old. Instead of going directly to the 2nd floor via the stairs, I decided to be a free spirit and took the elevator down to the 1st floor. From here, I went straight down to the basement to grab the father of all melee weapons, the hammer. This trusty weapon will be your friend throughout this experience, as it's longer than the pipe and stronger too. But since I ran down here first, I paid the ultimate price of not being able to go anywhere else because I lacked the required items. So back to the 1st floor we go. In the director's office is the red plate of the Queen. A plus to coming to both these floors unprepared is that we get this small little detail in the medicine room. When Harry tries to enter the exam room, the door is locked, but the sounds of someone running in heels behind it can be heard. Now to go the route the game intended, with heading up to the 2nd floor. Here, Harry can find a lighter in room 201, and the green plate of the Hatter in room 204. Grabbing this plate isn't as easy as the others, because it's well guarded by a hentai tentacle monster. Getting anywhere near this thing will result in it snapping at Harry, like a snapping turtle biting the tip of your penis when you try to steal its lettuce. What was I talking about again? Right, the plate and the monster. The bloodsucker, as it's actually known, is doing what its name implies, sucking blood that is directly in front of it on the floor. Throwing the blood pack Harry grabbed from the storage room makes it shift its focus to the newly created blood puddle, and allows Harry ample time to grab the plate of the Hatter. Or I guess plate of Hatter. And if you have read it before, then the theme of these plates might be ringing a bell. They all have to do with the classic children's novel, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. There is the Mock Turtle, which is the blue plate, the Cheshire Cat on the yellow, the Mad Hatter on the green, and the Queen of Hearts on the red. These 4 plates Harry obtained are required to complete the colored plate puzzle on the 2nd floor. This puzzle is on a locked door, and it has 4 plates already on it. Those colors are white, black, orange, and purple. On the wall beside it is a poem that gives away the solution. It says, "Clouds flowing over a hill, sky on a sunny day, tangerines that are bitter, lucky 4-leaf clover, violets in the garden, dandelions along a path, unavoidable sleeping time, liquid flowing from a slashed wrist." Well, one of these is not like the other. This puzzle is rather simple, as long as you're not colorblind, as it's given you the answers in the correct order. All you have to do is place them in their correct slots. It goes white, blue, orange, green, purple, yellow, black, and red. The only issue that may arise is not knowing to go clockwise from the starting point at the white plate, as you could end up placing the blue plate on the left side instead of the correct right side. Past the door is the basement storeroom key, and the disinfecting alcohol. Using said key in the basement leads to a room filled with shelving units with no real items of note. In the back left side of the room is a cabinet, and on the floor by it are some skid marks.
Now who's being childish?
Moving the cabinet reveals a door that leads to a small room, and at the end of it lies a lone grate that can't be moved, due to there being some weird vines grown around it. Instead of questioning the origin of these vines, Harry just throws the disinfecting alcohol onto them and lights them ablaze with his lighter. Past the grate is a hidden basement, which is extremely odd for a hospital to have. Most of the rooms are locked, with there being only 2 of importance. The first has a videotape that is covered in blood. Using it on the TV in room 302 shows a video.
You got 2 seconds to explain what you're doing on my property.
Oh, hi. My car broke down a few miles down the road. I'm looking for a phone.
Ain't got no phone.
Oh, okay. Well, could you tell me where the nearest town is then?
Nearest town's about an hour north from here. My uncle can give you a ride, I suppose.
Oh, great. Is your uncle here?
Nope. Gone fishing. He'll be back, though.
You mind if I wait here?
Looks like you ain't got much choice.
I sure hope he ain't going for no chainsaw.
Huh. That's a pretty entertaining watch. I guess we'll get back to that later. In reality, the tape is damaged, as it's way too staticky to view or hear. From what is audible, it sounds like a woman talking about a patient, as the words we do hear mention a fever and a pulse. The second thing of importance in the basement is a room with a hospital bed in the center. Harry notices that someone had recently been there, and on a console near the bed sits a picture of a woman named Alessa, who we saw in the basement at Midwich Elementary. A key sitting right by it unlocks the exam room on the first floor, which is where we heard the sounds of someone running in heels behind the door. In that room, hiding under a desk, is a young woman, who runs up to hug Harry in a moment of relief. Her name is Lisa Garland. She, like Dr. Kaufman, has absolutely no idea what happened to this town and its people, as she claims she was knocked unconscious right before it happened. Since she was unconscious, she also doesn't have any information on Cheryl's whereabouts. And when asked about the basement, she tells Harry that the staff of the hospital were given strict orders not to go there, which means she doesn't know anything about it either. Before he can explain what was in there, the notorious siren starts to blare. Harry suddenly gets a headache and falls unconscious. When he wakes up, the hospital is back to normal, and Lisa is nowhere to be found. But strangely, the old woman from the church pops through the door at just the right time, and finally introduces herself. Her name is Dahlia Gillespie, and instead of being straight with Harry, she continues to be cryptic, saying she knew the day that the town would be devoured in darkness would come. Obviously, Harry doesn't understand what she is talking about, and when asked, she simply brings out a key and points him in the direction of the other church in town. Dahlia then asks if he has seen any crests on the ground, which the one at Midwich comes to mind. These are the markings of Samael, and she warns Harry not to let them be completed. But so far, he is 0 for 1. But at least he has Dahlia by his side now, and she's gone. I guess Harry is flailing around in the dark once again. The key Dahlia left is for the Green Lion Antique Store, which is where we saw Alessa heading into before things got all fucky at the hospital. By this point, I had completely forgotten about that scene. It's probably because of where the devs decided to have the vision be played at. To be honest, it might have fit better if they showed it right as the world was transitioning back to normal after Harry's talk with Lisa. But regardless, the key's name and a simple map check should lead you to your destination. Inside the antique store is a bunch of shit just lying around. But upon further inspection, Harry finds yet another hidden area sitting behind a cabinet. But before he can enter, he hears a sound right behind him. He quickly turns and opens fire.
Sybil?
That obviously didn't happen. Instead, he turns to see that it's Sybil, the police officer who handed him the handgun that he is now pointing right at her. She was unable to leave town due to the roads being blocked or missing, so when she saw Harry enter the store, she decided to follow right behind him. She tells Harry that she caught a glimpse of a girl, but when she went after her, she vanished. Harry is rightfully upset about this, although I don't fully agree with him directing it towards Sybil, as she tried to help. The sighting was on Bachman Road, leading towards the lake, where the girl pulled some Chris Angel bullshit by walking on air over the missing road. Which one is it, Sybil? Did she disappear, or did she float? Sybil then asks Harry what has happened to him since the two of them went their separate ways. He brings up Dahlia and mentions her strange ramblings about the town being devoured in darkness. This is when Sybil gives the most hilarious and deadpan response in the entire game. Funny line delivery aside, she tells Harry that there is a massive drug problem in town, but the police have no idea who is behind it, as all of their leads haven't helped. Sybil interprets the darkness that Dahlia mentioned to be drugs, but Harry's shows that he doesn't seem to believe that. The two of them then turn their attention towards the hole in the wall. Sybil, being the police officer, says she should go first, but Harry shoots that shit down quickly and states that he is going in first. The two could have played rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first, but Sybil allows Harry to go in. Right before he steps in, he asks Sybil if she knows anything about the other world. He tries his best to explain it, and eventually just settles on liking it to a hallucination, which Sybil tells him, okay, not really. She tells him that he's probably tired. In the hole in the wall is a hallway, and at its end is some sort of altar. Harry believes this is the one Dahlia mentioned at the hospital, but he doesn't have a clue on who it's built for. But from the image we see above it, it looks like someone with big muscular arms that skipped leg day ever since they started pumping iron. Back to leave using the same way he came in, the altar's chalice suddenly starts burning. Things then go dark, and after some time has passed, Sybil goes in to check on Harry, only to find an empty room. Harry winds up at the Otherworld Hospital, where Lisa is waiting for him. Things are a bit hazy, which isn't good enough for me, so let's make it even more hazier. There we go, that's much better. Harry is obviously confused with how he got here, but Lisa tells him that he was just having a bad dream. Before he can really question that, he notices that she isn't looking too good, and asks if she is okay. Lisa deflects, telling him it's nothing to worry about, which Harry takes at face value because he's clueless. He then switches the topic over to Dahlia, asking Lisa if she knows her. She refers to Dahlia as a crazy lady, but one that is famous to the town. She explains that Dahlia never sees anybody, so she doesn't know much about her. But what she does know is that her daughter died in a fire, and that she's been crazy ever since. She also seems to know what Dahlia meant by the town being devoured by darkness, telling Harry that before the town turned into a resort, it was filled with people who followed an odd religion that practiced the occult. The reason behind this is that the younger people that lived in town started to move away, and the people that remained had the completely reasonable belief that they were being summoned by gods. Lisa says it's because there was nothing around Silent Hill, so the people had to blame it on something. But then new people came to town, and everybody stopped talking about it. This was years ago, and Lisa last heard of this cult when several people connected to the town's development had died, as the townspeople thought it was a curse. Everything starts to fade, only for Harry to find himself lying face first on some grating. He stands up and starts to question if any of this is real, or if he is just lying unconscious in a hospital bed after the car accident. He recalls that Sybil said Cheryl headed towards the lake, but has absolutely no idea on how to get there, as the road is blocked. With nothing else to go on, he decides to head to the hospital to ask if Lisa knows of a way to reach there. Outside, the nightmare is starting to get worse. Instead of the Otherworld being localized to just a certain location, it's spread to the streets, with more roads being gone completely. This forces Harry to go through the town's shopping mall. Before he goes up the escalators, a bunch of TVs off to the side power up, showing a harrowing scene.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
Sorry for what? Our daddy taught us not to be ashamed of our dicks, especially since they're such good size and all.
Yeah, I see that. Your daddy gave you good advice.
Would you get out of here? The TVs flicker, showing the marking of Samael, with those soon being overtaken by the same image of an apparently bound and distressed looking Cheryl. We can also catch quick glimpses of Alessa on the same TVs, but shortly after, the images of Cheryl unpause, and she can be heard calling for her dad to help her. Harry helplessly calls out to her, only for static to take over the screens. Weird symbols then start to flash, which at the moment have absolutely no meaning to Harry. He then heads upstairs, and after a short trip, he unintentionally decides to take the express flooring all the way down to the bottom level. This is where the second boss of the game resides. Just what could it be? The horrors of the game are getting worse, so the monsters must follow suit, right? Nope, it's just some sort of larva. Spooky. This fight is not too bad, as there isn't a story or anything to coincide with how to beat it. It's just a good old bullet sponge. The boss is called Twin Feeler, and it's pretty much always on the move. Its attacks consist of it spewing forth acid, burrowing and bursting out of the sand, and simply bulldozing Harry. Sitting on the ground by where Harry landed softly is the rifle, which you already know about. The boss requires you to constantly be moving, so you can avoid its attacks, so I wouldn't recommend using the rifle here. The pistol and shotgun allow Harry to move back and forth, with the extra benefit of allowing him to strafe left and right, which if used correctly, the boss will more than likely not be able to get a hit in. After dealing enough damage, Twin Feeler recoils in pain and curls up. It's not dead, however, and after a short period, it pieces the fuck out by breaking through a wall. Harry goes through the newly created hole in the wall and is able to reach the hospital.
Fuck you.
Inside, a relieved Lisa runs up to Harry and tells him that she is glad he came back to her. My man Harry is happy about it too, but says it in such a monotone voice you'd think he had other things on his mind. He quickly shifts the topic over on how to get to the lake, and after thinking for a second, Lisa remembers that there is a waterworks near Midwich Elementary School. Apparently, the tunnels underneath it lead all the way to the lake. Before he leaves, Lisa asks him not to go, because she doesn't want to be alone. He asks her to come with him, as the hospital may not be safe, but she oddly declines the offer, as she feels like she's not supposed to leave. Harry tells her to wait just a while longer, and reassures her that he will return to her after finding Cheryl. Outside the hospital, the roads are all missing, besides one single pathway. This pathway leads up a fire escape and onto the roof of a building. Suddenly, a giant moth crashes through a roof and attacks. This is Twin Feeler's evolved form, called Float Stinger, and once again, Harry must defend himself against it. Since it's a flying foe, it's best to use firearms instead of melee weapons, so Harry can deal damage while maintaining distance between him and the boss. I'm not saying the use of melee weapons on this boss is useless or anything, it's just that the boss will stab Harry with its stinger if it gets close to him. The only other attack it has is pretty much the same acid attack it had in its previous form. Beyond that, the only other thing this boss does is fly around. I mean, it makes sense, because it's a moth. After dealing enough damage, Float Stinger falls from the sky in its apparent death, which instantly turns the place back to normal. And by normal, I mean the fog world, as Silent Hill is anything but normal. When Harry reaches the bridge that leads back to Old Silent Hill, the game fast travels him back to Midwich, where the waterworks entrance is found. I think this was a very helpful feature the developers put in the game. Instead of them forcing you to backtrack all the way and trying to remember how to reach the school, it cuts all that out, which really helps with the pacing. Honestly, I don't recall many games doing this around Silent Hill's release, so I could be wrong when I say this, but I believe this feature should have been more common, as it shows the developers actually cared about the player and didn't want them wasting their time. Short rant aside, Harry tries to enter the waterworks through its fenced door, only to see that there is a padlock keeping it shut. He notices that it is worn out and might be able to be broken. This is the first and only time you can unlock something by destroying the lock. This isn't a complaint, by the way, as I'm just happy not to go looking for a key. Past the gate and down the ladder, Harry finds himself in the very popular video game environment, the sewers. Let me tell you, this place absolutely sucks. It may look big on the inside, but you are forced to walk through tight walkways that are maze-like and can abruptly lead to a dead end. This is made worse with the enemies that roam around. These little green reptile dudes are known as the Hanged Scratchers. There's a lot of them in here, and they can block Harry's way, which obviously leads to a fight. They are fast and do pretty decent damage, so if you get cornered or surrounded by them, then be prepared to lose a lot of health, or worse, die. Their names aren't just for fun either, as they actually do hang on the ceiling and can attack Harry while doing so. Another problem is that Harry's radio doesn't detect enemies while down here, so you best be ready to be caught off guard when one charges towards you out of the darkness. At one of the ends of the sewers, Harry finally comes across the map of the place, and hanging on a wall nearby is a key that will unlock a door leading to more sewer. And at the end of the section is a ladder. But Harry's not out of the woods yet, or in this case, sewers, as the ladder leads to yet another section of sewers. Thankfully, the map shows that the exit is nearby, but this is Silent Hill, the world of locked doors, so when Harry reaches the door leading out of this shithole, he finds that it's locked. The key is sitting in blood-filled water at the other end of the sewer. This is where the game throws a tense choice of grabbing the key or not. But this is only an illusion of choice, because you have to grab it. And when you do, a bunch of Hanged Scratchers ambush Harry. There are a ton of them, so it's best to try and outrun them instead of fighting. Going through the door and up another ladder, Harry emerges from the sewers and finds himself in the resort area of Silent Hill. Near the sewer entrance is Annie's bar, where Dr. Kaufman is being attacked by a sloth. Well, it looks like one at least, but is instead a monster called the Mumbler. Harry is quick to notice Kaufman being mauled by one of these creatures, and saves him in just the nick of time. They both ask each other if they have found a way out of Silent Hill, but both have come up empty. Kaufman, who seems to be in a hurry, starts to head for the door, and right before he can make it out, Harry asks if he knows anything about Alessa, to which Kaufman simply replies with a "No." After he's gone, Harry finds Kaufman's wallet next to where he was attacked. Inside it is a key and a receipt with the number 0473 scribbled on it. The code can be used on the combination lock on the door to the Indian Runner store that's sitting right behind Annie's bar. Sitting on the counter is a red-covered journal. Its contents seem to be about a drug deal between a man and a woman, with the journal's owner being the middleman. After a while, he doesn't want to be involved anymore, fearing for his life, and even contemplates leaving town. A key inside a nearby drawer opens up the safe that's by the cash register. Inside it are packets of the drug that Sybil mentioned at the antique store. Obviously, Harry doesn't want to partake in the recreational use, which makes it completely useless to him. On the wall by the safe is a grocery list, and at the bottom of the list is the code 0886, which is to be used on the rear entrance of the motel. Using this code on the keypad grants Harry access to the owner's room in the back of the motel's front desk. On the couch nearby is a magnet wrapped with some string. Pretty strange item to just pick up, but okay. On a desk nearby is the owner's diary. It's once again about the drug dealing in Silent Hill. Apparently, the owner was told to hold on to a package, and seemingly had no other option, as they feared the people they were dealing with had a hand in multiple deaths. including the town's mayor. Something else of note is a newspaper sitting on a coffee table. The article Harry reads is about the investigation into the drug called PTV. It states that the investigation had been stalled, as there were more suspicious deaths happening around town, making mention of the mayor's death, who had an anti-drug stance, and the death of a narcotics officer who died of a heart failure of unknown origin. Heading into the parking lot, Harry can use the key Kaufman left behind at the bar to enter motel room number 3. There is nothing of note in here besides a shelf sitting by the bathroom door, and moving it reveals a crack in the flooring. A key is at the bottom, but Harry's hands can't fit through the small hole, so he uses the magnet he got from the motel owner's room to grab the key. Apparently, it's for a motorcycle, which one can be found in the motel's garage. He checks out the unkept motorcycle and notices that there is dust sitting all over it, with some of it wiped away near the gas tank cap. Using the key to open it reveals a red vial wrapped in a bag. It looks just like the one that was destroyed in the director's office at Alchemilla Hospital. But before he can think anything else of it, an angry Dr. Kaufman bursts into the room demanding Harry to hand the vial over. He pretty much tells Harry to mind his own business if he knows what's good for him, and then storms out of the garage. Harry connects the dots in his head and assumes that Kaufman is part of the drug racket in Silent Hill, but decides to put it all aside for Cheryl and chalks this up as a complete waste of time. He leaves the motel and goes down Sanford Street, leading to the lighthouse. And this is when things get fucky, but in a worse than usual way. Instead of him passing out, or I guess teleporting to another location, the world changes around Harry in real time. He knows this change is different, and correctly assumes that instead of reality shifting into a nightmare, it's actually reality becoming a nightmare. He rushes towards the lakeside and comes across a boat, and inside it is Sybil, which is quite the relieving sight. She tells Harry that she followed him through the sewers and wants to know what the hell is going on with Silent Hill. Harry decides to build up the tension with his answer by telling her that he isn't going crazy in multiple different ways.
This may sound really off the wall, but listen to me. You've got to believe me. I haven't gone crazy, and I'm not fooling around. At first, I thought I was losing my mind, but now I know I'm not.
All leading up to him saying that it's being invaded by the other world, and that it's someone's nightmares come to life, with its darkness slowly swallowing up the town. Naturally, Sybil doesn't understand what the hell is going on, and I can't blame her, as I've been witnessing all this shit that she hasn't even seen, and I'm still lost. Harry is certain of one thing though, and it's that Cheryl is there with whomever created the darkness. And then, like a bad case of hemorrhoids, Dahlia pokes her head in, frantically spouting babble about a demon awakening, saying that there are 2 more markings of Samael left to be created before the town is sealed into the abyss, and when it is, the dead will walk, and martyrs will burn in the fires of hell. When asked what he could do to save Cheryl, she gives the extremely simple task of stopping the demon that has taken the form of Alessa. The 2 marks that are left are at the lighthouse and the amusement park. Sybil and Harry split up to cover both places, with Harry taking the lighthouse. After Sybil leaves, Dahlia tells Harry that he's going to have to use the Flauros, as it's the only way to stop the demon. Because there is only one of these things, and Harry is the one that holds on to it, he asks about Sybil. But like a ghost, Dahlia vanishes into the night through the other door, leaving Harry alone. Again. Going the opposite direction of Sybil takes Harry in the direction of the lighthouse, which requires him to go down a long stretch of docks filled with enemies.
Fuck you.
When he reaches the lighthouse, he goes up the spiral stairs, which gives us this sweet camera angle that moves up with Harry. At the top, he finds that he is too late, as Alessa has completed this mark of Samael. He tries to converse with her, but she vanishes right in front of him.
Bye, have a great time.
So with nothing left to do here, Harry heads back to the boat to see if Sybil had any luck on her end, only to find that she hasn't returned. So now he must head to the amusement park to see if she needs help. And this involves him going through yet another fucking sewer section. And when he arrives to it, we see that Sybil didn't reach the amusement park, because she was ambushed in the sewers leading to it.
Oh, that hurt!
The only good thing to come out of all this is that this sewer section is a lot shorter than the first one, and only involves one ladder going up, which is creepily surrounded by carousel horses. Speaking of carousel, this is where Harry finds Sybil, who is lounging around on a wheelchair. But there is something off with her, and when she stands up, we see that her eyes have turned red, which obviously means that she is evil. She slowly approaches Harry, only to unholster her handgun and fire at him. This boss fight has 2 phases, and can be very brutal, as her main attack involves her shooting Harry, which instantly takes his health down to red, with the added downside of him falling to the floor and taking his sweet-ass time to get back up. If she closes the distance, she will instead pistol whip Harry right in the face. This doesn't do as much damage as the bullet, obviously, but still hurts like a son of a bitch. After she goes through her 10-round magazine, or loses half of her health, we enter the second phase of the fight. She throws her handgun away, and will slowly walk towards Harry, where one of 2 attacks can happen. The first attack will have her hit Harry like her first phase, and the second one has her strangling him. These attacks are nowhere near as bad as her first phase, especially if you saved up a ton of ammo and can keep your distance. There is also this nice animation of Sybil riding on one of the horses if you stray too far away from her. But before you decide to go through the whole fight, there is a way to skip the entire thing. Instead of fighting her, Harry can use the plastic bottle filled with the red liquid he got from Alchemilla Hospital, and is able to throw it at Sybil. She recoils in pain from this, and there appears to be smoke emitting from her back. She falls to the ground, and a parasite crawls off of her. These are the same ones that took over the doctors and nurses, but the difference between them and Sybil seems to be how long the parasite has been on its host. The ones on the doctors and nurses are a lot bigger, indicating that they've been controlled by these parasites for quite some time, while Sybil's pales in comparison, as it has only recently attached to her. With the parasite now off of her, it crawls towards Harry, who promptly stomps on it. When Sybil comes to, she seemingly has no recollection of what just happened, which can be a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. While Harry helps her, she asks him why Cheryl was taken. He isn't 100% sure on why, but thinks she has a connection to Silent Hill, as she isn't his biological daughter. He and his wife found her on the side of the road, and with no one knowing where she came from, they took her in. They did this because Harry's wife was sick at the time, and she didn't seem to be getting better. So as a last chance to have a kid of their own, they adopted Cheryl. Tragically, from what was said earlier, Harry's wife died 4 years ago, when Cheryl was only 3. Regardless of her being adopted or not, Cheryl is still his daughter, and he is going to try and save her. Harry leaves Sybil behind to recover, and this is when he crosses paths with Alessa. He tells her that he doesn't care what she is doing, but asks for her to let Cheryl go. Alessa doesn't respond to this though. She simply raises her hand towards Harry and force pushes him to the ground. He attempts to run towards her, but is blocked by some kind of magic barrier. This is when he notices that the Flauros is glowing. He takes it out of his pocket, and it activates on its own. It levitates high up in the air and opens up, emitting a bright light that eventually shoots a beam straight at Alessa. She falls to the ground, seemingly losing all of her magical abilities. This is when Dahlia shows up out of nowhere once again, chastising Alessa for being a pest. This is also when we learn that she is Alessa's mother, and that the reason this all started is because she was careless, and didn't expect Alessa to escape from their spell that was keeping her trapped. Alessa demands her to stay away, but Dahlia casts some type of spell that will take them home, because she has need of her for one final thing. And since Harry is nearby, he also gets teleported to what seems to be Alchemilla Hospital, where Lisa awaits. That's totally normal. right? To be honest, I don't know what's more unsettling, Lisa's eye twitching in that manner, or Harry's holy shit expression. The two of them sit down, and Lisa tells Harry that she went looking down in the basement. She didn't find anything unusual, but started to get this feeling like she's been there before. That something happened, and she can't remember what it was. Harry tries to console her about it, telling her that it's only a temporary feeling. But this doesn't work, and Lisa rushes out of the room. While wondering what just happened, Harry hears a sound coming from the basement, and going through the same door Lisa did, leads to a room he's never seen before. That's because this isn't Alchemilla Hospital. It's instead a place in the other world called Nowhere. He takes a lone elevator down to what appears to be the halls of the hospital, but this is the furthest thing from it. One moment Harry can be in the hospital, but the next he can find himself in a completely different place, like the school or the antique store for examples. This hellish place has no map, and is easy to get lost in. It also has a handful of puzzles to make matters worse. Going down towards the basement, Harry finds himself inside a classroom, with a single desk sitting right in the center. Scratched onto it are deplorable messages to the desk's owner, calling them a thief, telling them to go home, and to drop dead. With the information we have, we can assume that this was Alessa's, and her fellow classmates were not afraid of bullying her, which is pretty on point with how human beings are in general. Beyond this is some sort of hospital room where a gurney sits. On it is a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. The screwdriver will be used later, but the pliers can be used on a faucet in the room sitting to the left of the elevator Harry took to get here. This gives him the key of Ophiel, which unlocks a nearby door. Going through it leads to another hall that has 2 slates on each end. The furthest mentions engraved names and a head count from youngest to oldest on the Grim Reaper's list. This is a clue that is paired up with the second slate. This one is the Grim Reaper's list, and on it are 5 names with their ages sitting right beside them. Taking the first letter of their names from youngest to oldest spells out alert. And next to the list is a peculiar looking keypad that has the whole alphabet on it. Entering alert onto it unlocks the door the keypad sits beside. The first room past the door seems to have no use to Harry, but the one past it has the Amulet of Solomon hanging on a wall. On his way out with the amulet, Harry runs into Lisa, who seemingly knows why she's alive while everyone else isn't, saying that she is no different than the ones we've seen at the hospital, that of course being dead. She just hadn't noticed until she came down to the basement. She asks for Harry to save her while moving in closer for an embrace. Harry, being Harry, shoves her away from him, and we are given one of the most soul-crushing scenes in the entire game. Now, I'm always one to inject his shit comedy into something, but with this, I won't, as I don't want to detract from its impact.
Lisa.
In order for me not to have a mental breakdown here, I'm gonna throw this in.
Stay by me, Harry. Please.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Lisa.
You can come out now, Johnny. She's gone.
In a few minutes, bitch.
Yeah, I'm still depressed. If Harry decides to walk back into the room, Lisa is nowhere to be found. And sitting on the floor in the middle of the room is her diary. Its contents are about her time taking care of the patient that resided in the hospital's basement. That she asked if she could stop taking care of them, remarking that their wounds wouldn't heal. The diary entries eventually start going over her experiencing the nightmares of Silent Hill, being stuck in rooms filled with insects, regardless if there were ways for them to get in, feeling sick constantly and throwing up nothing but bile, and witnessing blood and pus flow from the bathroom faucets, with no way of stopping it. Lastly, she pleads for drugs, and for someone to help her. Jesus, it's really hard to put into words how awful reading this is, as it's from someone who truly never deserved what happened to them. The second to last line from her diary indicates that she was a victim of the drug PTV that's been circulating throughout the town. And with what we've seen and read throughout Harry's travels, we can guess that Dr. Kaufman is one of, or the one, behind the drug dealings. The code from his briefcase leading to the Indian Runner store that had the drugs in it is indicative of this. Another thing that points to him being involved is the red liquid in the hospital director's office, as he is, or I guess was, the director leading up to Silent Hill's change. Since he was the director, then that also means he was the doctor she talked to when she tried to quit caring for the patient. Alright, enough of this depressing moment. Let's drown our sorrows with a puzzle. Across from Depression Avenue is the Zodiac Puzzle. In the back of the room is a metal thing. On the walls leading up to it are 4 pictures with a number below them. There is Libra with a 2 under it, Pisces with a 0, Cancer with a 10, and Capricorn with a 4. On the metal thing in the back of the room, there are 3 keypads with a picture above them. Now, being lost for a moment is nothing to be ashamed of, as it took me a second to realize what this all meant. Looking at the pictures with the numbers below them, we can see that it's counting the number of limbs shown. Using our knowledge of this, we can enter the numbers 6 below Sagittarius, 4 below Taurus, and 8 below Gemini. Doing this will release the Stone of Time, that can be used in the antique store clock back on the first floor. When Harry slots it in, the glass from said clock burst out like an explosion from a goddamn claymore, which really seems like it would blind poor Harry. After removing the shards of glass from his face, Harry grabs the key of Haggith, or Haggith, whatever it is. He grabs the key from the clock. This key unlocks the door leading to the elevator, which can take him to the 2nd and 3rd floors. On the 2nd floor, there are 3 rooms of note. The first is the jewelry store, where Harry can pick up the Crest of Mercury and the Ring of Contract. The second is an office with a lone camera sitting on the desk. The third and final is the sick room, where a panel can be unscrewed off a wall with a screwdriver to reveal a key wrapped in live electrical wire. We currently can't grab it, as it would result in Harry getting shocked. So for now, we must leave the key behind. Unlocking a set of double doors on this floor leads Harry back to the first, which is a requirement in order to grab the key later on. Taking an elevator to the 3rd floor, we see 2 doors, an altar like the one at the antique store, and a vision of Alessa. On both sides of the altar are 2 paintings. The one on the left is titled The Light of the Future, and the one on the right is The Light Illuminating the Darkness. These are hints on what you need to do with the paintings. Using the camera we obtained from the 2nd floor on the paintings reveals 3 symbols on each one. Both doors have 3 panels, with 9 buttons on each one. Recreating the symbols that were seen on the paintings unlocks the doors. The door on the right leads to the director's office, where there is a book about the White Claudia plant. It goes over their height, where they can be found, and brings up their seeds that can cause hallucinations, which were used in religious ceremonies. There is another thing that can be found in this room, but the way to spawn it seems to be completely random. It's a newspaper from 7 years ago. The article is about Alessa, whose charred body was found after a fire destroyed her family home. Harry also notices that the date of the fire was the same date that he and his wife found Cheryl. This is definitely not a coincidence, but I'll talk more about that later. The room on the left has a birdcage key that unlocks, you guessed it, a birdcage on the first floor by the elevator. Inside the cage is the key of Phaleg, which unlocks the door sitting right by this room. The door leads to the basement section of the hospital, and surprisingly, just like the previous hallway, all doors here can actually be opened. The first door to go through leads to the kitchen, where Harry comes across a fridge with a broken chain on it. Above the chain is the dagger of Melikor, but you do not want to take it unless the chain is fixed, because if you do and walk away from the fridge, this will happen. This is the only instance of something like this killing Harry in the entire game, which is quite the shock to experience if you had no knowledge of it. The way to stop this from happening is to use the ring of contract Harry grabbed in the jewelry store to help rebuild the chain. This makes it completely safe to walk away from the fridge with the dagger in hand. The next room to visit has graffiti all over it. There is also another vision of Alessa, who is seen crying under a desk. Above that desk is an Ankh. Beyond that, there's nothing else in this room. Across from that room lies a storeroom that has a random bag of jelly beans sitting on a shelf. Opening them up has the obvious jelly beans inside, but also has the key of Bethor. Past this room, Harry finds another TV with a VCR. Inserting the static-filled videotape he got a long time ago into the VCR reveals the undamaged version of it.
It gets bigger when I pull on it.
Well, might as well finish it.
Sometimes I pull on it so hard, I rip the skin.
Well, my daddy taught me a few things too, like how not to rip the skin by using someone else's mouth instead of your own hands.
Will you show me?
I'd be right happy to.
Yeah, let's just stop that there. The tape obviously isn't the Oscar-winning movie Boy Band, and is instead a videotape of Lisa, explaining the horrific condition of the patient that was in the basement. Near the end of the tape, she expresses her desire to stop caring for them, and promises to tell no one. Though it's just more stuff to make me feel even worse for her. Using the key of Bethor unlocks the door to the generator, and turning it off powers down the elevator. But since the doors on the first floor can lead to the second, there's no real use for it anyway. And with the power off, Harry can grab the key of Eritron that was behind the panel he unscrewed. This final key is used to unlock the door leading to the patient room in the basement. A fun fact about these keys and their symbols is that they match the ones we saw back in the mall where Harry saw Cheryl on the TV screens. Their names and their markings represent the Olympian spirits, which had to do with occult rituals. There is nothing else to really say about them, I just thought it was a nice addition. Inside the patient room is a vision of Dahlia, Dr. Kaufman, and two unnamed doctors. Since Dahlia is here, we finally have all the information we need to determine that the patient that Lisa was taking care of was Alessa, who was badly injured from the fire. Apparently, from what they are saying, they are using Alessa to give birth to something in her womb that will grant them untold power. Alessa, however, split her soul in two, which is denying them their power. The other half of her soul is none other than Harry's daughter, Cheryl, who he found the same day the fire happened. Dahlia kept the badly injured Alessa alive in order to use her magic to lure Cheryl back to Silent Hill. This didn't work how she intended though, as Alessa was able to reach Cheryl first. This forced Dahlia to use Harry to recapture Alessa, so she could complete whatever it was that she started 7 years ago. Now she has her, and who knows what could happen. Sitting by Alessa's hospital bed is the Disc of Ouroboros, which can be used in the final room. This is Alessa's bedroom, which adds context to two of the bosses from earlier. On one of the walls are moth specimens, which if we think back, the boss Twin Feeler is a moth larva, and Float Stinger is the matured form of Twin Feeler. I don't really know what to say about Splithead, so I'll just leave it up to your imagination. At the end of the room is a giant metal door that requires 5 items to open. Those items being the Disc of Ouroboros, the Crest of Mercury, the Amulet of Solomon, the Ankh, and the Dagger of Melchior. Going through the door, we see a vision of Dahlia being the Mother of the Year contender towards Alessa. She is begging her to lend her some of her powers, but Alessa refuses. Dahlia's thoughts then seem to shift towards something different. It isn't really stated clearly, but the ritual they perform on Alessa seems to be something they didn't think of initially, with Dahlia only realizing this at the moment this vision is showing us. After that's over, Harry takes the nearby staircase down to the deepest point of nowhere. Sybil is already here, and pointing her handgun right at Dahlia. And sitting right by her is Alessa, and what appears to be a covered-up body in a wheelchair. Dahlia clearly isn't fazed by Sybil's weapon, and starts spouting out more cryptic bullshit, saying that if Alessa's soul would have been away for any more time, then everything would have been for naught. But even though Alessa has been stopped, Cheryl needs to be dealt with. Sybil fires a round at Dahlia, but a barrier stops it. Sybil then gets force pushed, and that's when Harry walks into this mess. He asks where Cheryl is, and Dahlia tells him that she has been restored to her former self. But Harry is...
No mood for jokes.
She says she is right by her, and points to the young woman on the floor, which Harry says,
No mood for jokes.
Wait, that wasn't right.
That's absurd.
That's the correct line. Dahlia tells him that he is the only one to think it is, saying it's been 7 years since the fire, and Alessa has been kept alive all that time, suffering a fate worse than death. An endless nightmare from which she has never awoken from. But the day has come, the day that everyone will be released from pain and suffering, that Alessa will be the Mother of God. Alessa and the body in the wheelchair combine to form into the incubator, an incandescent being wearing an all-white gown. But a gunshot rings out, and Dahlia falls to the ground. It's Dr. Kaufman, and he demands Dahlia to return things to normal, which is quite the demand to make after putting a bullet into someone. He's angry at Dahlia for being a pawn in her scheme, and brings out the vial of red liquid that was in the motorcycle's gas tank at the motel. This actually freaks Dahlia out, as she seemingly knows what the liquid is called, calling it a glophytus. She thought she had gotten rid of it all, but Dr. Kaufman kept it hidden from her as a backup plan. She pleads for him to stop, but it's useless, as Kaufman throws the vial of red liquid at the incubator. Any moment now. Just wait. Well, while we're here, how's everyone's day been so far? Are you enjoying the video? 'Cause I'm not. Hey, it finally hit. The aglophytus drenches the incubator, covering its once white robe in red. It also seems to cause it pain, which you think would be a good thing, and it is, in a way, but let's not start giving each other firm dick shakes all around just yet, as Dahlia starts to laugh maniacally. The incubator's back splits open, and a creature emerges. This is the god that Dahlia spoke of, and it resembles Baphomet. Well, at least the goat-headed one, that originated from French occultist Eliphas Levi. Its name is Incubus. No, not them. And while it may not have been the perfected version of God because of the aglophytus, it's still a threat. As a thank you for helping it be born, it sends red lightning down onto Dahlia, killing her. Thankfully, we have Dr. Kaufman to back us up, as 2 against 1 helps tremendously, and never mind, he's gone. I guess he ran away or something. This fight is simple and difficult at the same time. It only has 1 attack, which is its red lightning. But this shit hits like a damn truck, and will leave Harry on the verge of death after being hit by it once. If he doesn't heal afterwards, then the next strike from it will kill him. Dodging it by running around and strafing can work for a time, but you'll find that you won't be dealing enough damage to it. So what should you do? Well, it may sound odd, but it's best to stay put and tank all that damage. If you have enough heals and a ton of rifle rounds, then simply staying put and unloading into the incubus while healing after each strike will result in a quick and simple boss fight. There is also a funny interaction if you start the fight with no ammo for any weapon. After surviving for a little bit, the boss will die on its own, as you would be softlocked otherwise, since melee weapons are useless against it due to it being unreachable. When enough damage is dealt, Alessa will scream out in pain, and the incubus will fall to the floor. A bright light emits from it, and the incubator appears once more. As the area around it starts to crumble, she uses her power to give Harry a newborn baby. She opens a portal behind her and fades away. Harry then takes the baby through it, with Sybil following behind them. The useless Dr. Kaufman awakens from being knocked out, but before he can even head in the direction of the portal, Lisa appears from the ground below and takes a hold of him, dragging him down to his death. Harry and Sybil make it out of nowhere thanks to Alessa's portal, and are seen escaping Silent Hill. After the credits, we see the two of them standing together with the newborn baby, in a scene that resembles the intro where Harry and his wife found Cheryl on the side of the road. Before going over the rest of the endings, the developers added this blooper reel for us to enjoy. Okay, there are 4 more endings to achieve after this one. I'll go over how to get them in the order from bad to good, with the final one being the joke ending. I'll then talk about what ending is considered canon in the world of Silent Hill, as there are theories and different answers from the developers. The first ending is the bad one. There are 2 things you must do, or in this case, not do, in order to achieve this ending. The first is by not discovering the vial of Aglaophatus at the end of Kaufman's storyline. The second is not saving Sybil during your fight with her at the amusement park, and choosing to kill her instead. You then play through the game like normal, leading all the way up until you reach the final boss. Sybil will obviously not be here, and Dr. Kaufman won't show up with the Aglaophatus to throw at the incubator. This results in a fight against it, and not the incubus. But their attacks are pretty much the same, with just the color of the lightning being different. After defeating the incubator, Cheryl thanks her father and says goodbye. Harry falls to his knees, yelling out his daughter's name. After the credits, we get the grim sight of Harry, who seemingly died in the car accident at the very beginning of the game. The next ending is the bad plus one. The only thing that changed from the previous ending is saving Sybil during her boss fight. The final boss will still be the incubator, and the remainder of the ending is the same, up until the end credits scene, where we see Sybil approaching a defeated Harry. She slaps some sense into him and tells him to go, but gets no answers out of him. Not much else to go on here, as the camera pans away and we don't know if they live or die. I'll just assume that they die though. Now for the good ending. This requires you to complete the Kaufman side story, but not save Sybil. Since Kaufman has, and uses the Agolophatus, the boss fight is against the Incubus. After its defeat, Harry takes the newborn baby that Alessa created out of the portal all by himself. The after credits scene simply shows him reaching the outskirts of Silent Hill with his newborn daughter. The last is a UFO ending. After completing the game with a good plus ending, an item called the Channeling Stone appears in town. It's located inside the convenience store on Bachman Road, and this item must be used in 5 specific locations. The first is on the roof of the Otherworld Midwich Elementary School. You'll know it works if a small scene plays out where Harry sees a glowing light in the sky. After sitting still for a moment, the light disappears from view. The second is at the gated area outside the Otherworld Ocamilla Hospital, right before the fight with Float Stinger. The third is in the resort area, in the parking lot of Norman's Motel. The fourth is inside the boat where Harry and Sybil meet up before splitting up to go to the lighthouse and amusement park. This scene shows that there are 5 UFOs, and they soon split away from each other after Harry catches sight of them. The fifth and final location is at the top of the lighthouse where Harry sees Alessa. This time, a whole fleet of UFOs appear, and instead of flying away, they land and come out of their ships. The cutscene that plays is done in this really awesome comic book style, and involves Harry being clueless as he asks the aliens if they have seen Cheryl. Instead of answering, they shoot him with one of their ray guns, taking him aboard one of their ships and flying away. The credits are also different, and we get this asinine music to play along with it. This ending is absolutely insane, and I love it. So that is all the endings in Silent Hill 1. The good and good plus endings both have a chance of being the canon ending, with most people agreeing that the regular good ending where Sybil dies is the correct one. I personally hope that isn't the case, as I believe Sybil deserves to live. But the game's writer, Hiroyuki Iwaku, says it's up to the player's imagination, with Masahiro Ito believing that she is dead. Lastly, the creator of Silent Hill, Kiichiro Toyama, stated that the regular good ending is canon, and that Hiroyuki Iwaku developed Silent Hill 3 around this ending. But to jumble this up even more, Hiroyuki Iwaku later changed his mind and considers the ending where Sybil lives to be canon. So you know what? I believe that is the case, as there needs to be some kind of happy ending here, right? Regardless, everyone will have their opinions on this, which I think adds more depth to the game's endings. Some may want a tragic but hopeful end, and others may want a full-fledged happy ending, where the heroes make it out alive. But no matter where you stand on this topic, we can all agree that this game is a timeless classic. As I mentioned earlier, there are unlocks you can obtain by completing the game and earning the different endings. There are 6 in total, 4 weapon unlocks and 2 item ones. The 2 items have no use beyond being used to obtain or use on the unlockable weapons. The first item unlock is the gas can, and it can be used on one of 2 weapons. The first you'll come across is the chainsaw, that is inside a broken tool store window sitting near the church. Using the gas can on it consumes the item, but allows you to use the chainsaw, which is a decent weapon overall. But it being a chainsaw, you'd think it'd be something groundbreaking. What is groundbreaking is the rock drill. Okay, not really. Its location is right under the bridge control room, right before you reach Central Silent Hill, with it pretty much being only a small step above the chainsaw in terms of damage. A downside to these 2 weapons is that you can only get one on the next playthrough after unlocking the gas can, with the second one being accessible on the playthrough after that. But once you have them both filled up, you can completely forget about them in your inventory, due to the likelihood that you've already unlocked the strongest melee weapon in the game. That weapon being the katana, the weeb's wet dream. While it's the strongest melee option Harry can use, it also comes with a unique moveset, which is a nice addition.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
The way to unlock this is by getting one good and one bad ending. Then you can find it inside the house that has the 3 locks near the beginning of the game. The second item unlock is the channeling stone, and it must be used to achieve the UFO ending. Doing so unlocks the strongest range weapon in the game, that being the Hyper Blaster, and it comes in 3 colors.
Wow!
Those are red, yellow, and green. And they aren't just for show either, as the color you get changes the damage it deals, with red being the lowest in terms of damage. The way to get the green version of the blaster is by getting the hard to accomplish 10-star grade at the end of the game. This is something that's too time consuming for me to achieve, as you have to complete the game a minimum of 5 times before you can even get a shot at it. Then, you must complete the game in under an hour and a half, with 2 or less saves, picking up at least 150 items, and finally, getting a certain amount of kills with both melee and ranged weapons, with the range kills needing to be done at certain distances that vary from short to long range, with your grade being penalized if you miss a shot. So yeah, it's not a simple task. This grading system will also become the norm with the other games in the series. And while I'm on that topic, the series continued on after this game, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, with the second game following a different protagonist with no link to anyone in this game. But that's for another video. Besides the PlayStation 1 version of this game, there was also a play novel version released on the fucking Game Boy Advance of all things. Sadly, it was only released in Japan, but thanks to some dedicated fans, it's been ported and translated to the PC. This version of Silent Hill has 2 scenarios, with a no longer obtainable third one. You can either play as Harry or Sybil, with Harry having the longer storyline. The third scenario followed a boy named Andy, who was Harry and Cheryl's neighbor. This was actual DLC long before DLC had a name to it. And since I said it's no longer obtainable, that means it's lost media, and we don't really know how his story went besides a few scraps of information on it. Aside from the games, there was also a Silent Hill movie. Well, 2 to be exact, with a third one on the way. The first one is not that bad to be honest, and while it does make some questionable story changes, it's an entertaining experience nonetheless. It also stars Sean Bean, which gives it some nice star power. The second movie is a waste of your time, and you'd have a better experience eating paint chips. Funnily enough though, it starred Kit Harington, so that's 2 major players in the Game of Thrones series tied to the Silent Hill movies. What a small world we live in. Now we have a remake of this game to look forward to, as the remake of the second game was a huge success. Why did they remake the second one over this one? Well, it's because Silent Hill 2 is considered one of the best horror experiences ever made. So regardless of it not making sense, it probably helped this game get its own remake treatment. So let's just be thankful. Let's now shift over to something that made this great game into a near perfect one, and that is its audio. The first thing I'll talk about is the voice acting, and it's pretty good, especially for its time. Even more so when you compare it to its competitor's first game, Resident Evil 1.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
It's pretty much night and day here, to be quite honest. While I have immense love for Resident Evil 1, its voice acting is humorous at best. Silent Hills, while having long pauses in between lines due to what I believe were hardware limitations, sounds professional in comparison, even with there being a small handful of questionable line reads.
Radio. What's going on with that radio?
Obviously, by the time the game was released, Resident Evil was on its second entry, which had drastically better voice acting than the first one. So by the time Silent Hill came out, the 2 stood pretty much neck and neck with the quality of the voice acting. There are many theories on how the voice lines ended up the way that they are, from the crew being inspired by the works of David Lynch,
You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
to the artistic choice of leaving long pauses in the lines to add an unnatural feeling to the scenes. I don't really know the answer, to be entirely honest, but like I said before, I believe the pauses were because of hardware limitations, and the unnatural line reading was probably done to add a daze-like feeling to all the characters, as if they were waking up from a dream and are caught in between the dream world and the real world, like if you were in a deep sleep and were quickly awoken by someone, only for you to spout out some nonsense because you still feel like you're in your dream. But that's my take on it, and I can be entirely wrong. This is just another thing that adds mystique to this game's development. And while we're here talking about the voice lines, let's go over the voice actors for the characters. The role of Cheryl Mason and Alessa Gillespie went to Sandra Wayne, who from what I can see, hasn't done any other work beyond these roles. Granted, they could have been using a pseudonym, but as of this moment, no one has come out to claim their involvement in these roles. The voice of Dahlia Gillespie, Liz Momorsky, has had a handful of other voice roles after Silent Hill. Most of them were for The Sims 2 and its expansions, with her two other notable roles being for point-and-click adventure games. The first of them was for Sam & Max, as the Wind Moai.
And spirit, keepers of the elemental power.
Sounds like either a good prog rock album or a bad animated series.
I control the power of wind.
And the second was Madame Strigoi, in A Vampire Story.
Come in and sit down, we meet at last.
Things get really interesting beyond her voice acting, where she created these things called art bots for a robot-centered competition called Robo Games between the years 2008 and 2009, with her art bot Scanman winning a bronze medal in the 2008 Robo Games. Michael Kaufman's voice actor, Jerian Monroe, has the largest VO resume out of anyone in the cast, with him also having some acting roles in both TV shows and movies throughout his career. He first started his career all the way back in the 1970s, with it leading up to 2018, where it seems that he has retired. His most notable VO role, besides Michael Kaufman, is the voice of one of the protagonists in the IO interactive shooter series, Kane and Lynch, where he plays the psychopathic criminal James Seth Lynch.
Screw.
Next is Thessaly Lerner, who voiced Lisa Garland. After Silent Hill, she continued to do VO work, and even did live acting. But that's not all, as she is also a musician, casting director, writer, producer, and director, which is definitely nothing to scoff at. Other than her role as Lisa Garland, she also did VO work in The Sims 2, alongside Liz Momorsky. Besides these, her most prolific work on the VO front is for the TV animated series Astrid Strudelman, the Unicorn Whisperer, where she voiced not only the main character, but a handful of others as well. Along with doing the VO work, she also wrote, directed, composed, and produced for this series. She is also known as the Ukulele, and is still releasing music to this day, with her most recent work being released in 2024. Sybil Bennett's voice actress, Susan Papa, has stayed busy just like Thessaly before her. She has done more than just VO work throughout her career, as she has acted, produced, directed, and even designed costumes for a film. While most of the work she has done are on short and indie films, that doesn't take away from the amount of hard work she's put into them. And while I may only know her work as Sybil in Silent Hill, she has continued to have a successful career, with her most recent role being in the 2025 movie called Granite Rapids Moon, where she played as a character named Elizabeth. Last but not least is the voice of Harry Mason, Michael Gwynn. After Silent Hill, it seems that he has not taken on another role, except for a film called Cross, which I can't seem to find anything about. But before Silent Hill, Michael had roles for a decent number of games, but I'll just highlight two of the major ones that stand beside his role as Harry Mason. The first, which also happened to be the first role he ever got, was the announcer in the classic arcade racer, Ridge Racer. A lot of people will probably recognize him from this role, but there are many that will remember him for the second game I'm going to mention, that being the role of Dracula in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you're like me, then you have no issue recalling the famed cutscene between Dracula and Richter.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you?
What a classic. And that is all she wrote when it comes to the voices behind the characters in Silent Hill. So now, let's get to the extreme glazing of the man behind the sound and the music in Silent Hill, the famed composer and sound designer Akira Yamaoka. When you think of the Silent Hill series, you obviously think of the town that shares the same name, but you also think of its music. Akira Yamaoka is the man behind that music, as well as all the game's sound effects. When he first volunteered to compose for the soundtrack of Silent Hill, he thought he would do just that, but he later ended up becoming its sound designer while retaining his role as composer. And let me tell you, I truly don't know how well anyone else would have done in this position, as everything he has done fits so perfectly within the game. But before we get to what he originally signed up for, let's first go over what he kind of fell into, that being the game's sound effects. We all know that the guns sound like guns and whatnot, but the real interesting stuff involves the sounds of the monsters and the sounds that play within the game's world. Since the artist didn't go for your average style of monster, the monster's sound effects followed suit, as they are all extremely unique, like the sounds that come from the knife-wielding Grey children that roam Midwich Elementary, or the ones that come from the strange, translucent, and unkillable larval stalkers that roam the same halls as the Grey children. I mean, what gerbil-ass sound effect is that? But the most horrific sounding one, at least in my opinion, comes from the hang scratchers. No matter if you're in a safe area or not, these things will make their presence known by making their weird scratching, growling sound. These things being placed in the sewers doesn't help one bit, as nothing good has ever come from a sewer section in a video game, with these further cementing my stance on that. Now let's go beyond the enemies, and this is when we get to the real scary stuff. The two standout sound effects are obviously the sound of Harry's radio when a monster is nearby.
Radio. What's going on with that radio?
And the foreboding siren that goes off in the distance. Once you hear either of these, then you know shit is about to get real. And while those may be the most memorable, the real horrific stuff comes from the sounds that play that have absolutely no explanation behind them. Throughout Silent Hill, you will come across certain rooms that play sound effects that will catch you off guard, like the girl crying in the restroom at Midwich. Or the glass breaking sound in the secret basement at Akamilla Hospital. There is no source to these sound effects within the game. It's just there, and hearing them while playing the game alone at night as a kid really fucked me up. And honestly, they're still kind of creepy to me now. While the sound effect work in this game is amazing, the music is absolutely phenomenal. Akira Yamaoka really made a name for himself when it came to the music he created for this game. And when asked what his influences were for his music, he cited Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, Metallica, Depeche Mode, and Angelo Badalamenti, who worked with David Lynch on a number of projects, most notably the Twin Peaks theme and Mulholland Drive. And it's easy to see these influences in his work, but he is also able to stray from those influences and create something that's completely his own. I truly don't know how this man does it, but he is able to make music that sounds like a washer-dryer combo, a distorted nightmare that I can't even comprehend on how to explain what it sounds like, and a gut-punching melody that plays right after witnessing the game's most tragic character, besides Alessa, realizing that they have been dead the whole time. Most of the soundtrack sounds industrial-like, if that's even a way to describe it. It's all very nightmare-inducing, which I guess is on par with the game's themes. But like Lisa's theme, Akira Yamaoka was able to add some emotional depth to the soundtrack, alongside the scare factor that is in most tracks, which couldn't have been an easy feat to accomplish. I also would like to know who the madman was that decided to put Lisa's face on the cover of the soundtrack. Just seeing her in such a happy state while knowing her fate just makes the whole thing a lot more depressing. But I digress. For me personally, I enjoy the softer tracks that are in the game. While I have nothing against the scarier tracks, I think his best work is when he is making the more emotionally impactful songs for the series. But obviously that's just me. After his work in Silent Hill 1, Akira Yamaoka would continue to create music and sound effects for the series leading up to the Silent Hill 2 remake. And if I'm correct, then that means he has worked on every Silent Hill project that has been released, making him the only member of the original Team Silent to make it this far. Kind of bittersweet, to be honest. All of this leads to today, where his work on the next Silent Hill game, called Silent Hill F, will be heard upon its release in September of this year, which is 2025 if you're watching it much later. Akira Yamaoka's work never disappoints, so I'm certain there are going to be tons of top tier tracks within the game. But for now, we must sit and wait. That's all she wrote for Silent Hill 1. If you're like me, then you consider this game to be a near masterpiece. Its story, characters, and environments were so unique at the time of its release. And honestly, they're still unique today, as nothing comes close to the feel of the original Silent Hill games. While there are some small complaints I have about this game, like its camera and boss variety, none of them are too detrimental, where they impact the experience in an overtly negative way. I am also cutting Team Silent some slack here, due to them being a small group at this point in time. I still can't get over how a small development team was able to put this together, and release it without it being a complete mess. It seemed like everything was going against them too, with a change in management, the constant stops in development, and the fact that most people on the team had to take on more work, due to the aforementioned size of Team Silent. But yet, they were able to create something great, and that has stood the test of time. After the game's release, its director and creator, Kiichiro Toyama, would leave Konami, and set out to create another horror series called Siren, which I'm familiar with, but not a huge fan of. The next release from Team Silent will be Silent Hill 2, with the director now being Masashi Tsuboyama. Like I said previously, it is considered by many to be the high point of the series. Do I agree with that viewpoint? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see when, and if, that video releases. I work on more than just the Silent Hill series, so depending on how well this video is received, I may end up working on Silent Hill 2 sooner rather than later, as I will probably still make the video as I have immense love for the game. But that's about it for me at the moment. The next video I'll be covering is Resident Evil Code Veronica, which will most likely come out a lot quicker than this video did due to the difficulties of finding the information about its development. But until then, have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video.